So I thought this was only going to be a rapid fire review, one of my short ones, and I am so glad I was wrong about that. StarRupture is only showing about 15% of its planned roadmap in this playtest, but even that slice left me impressed. The factory mechanics are already tight, the world feels lived in, and the humor caught me off guard in the best of ways. It genuinely kept me engaged during the most brain-nodding parts of the tutorial. It's a factory game, there's going to be a little of that. The tutorial drops you in with dark humor and tidy pacing, just enough to break you in without holding your hand. I stumbled early on a couple of things, how reloading your mining tool actually cools your gun, and the fact that you can build more than one launcher. A detail I completely missed thanks to Satisfactory's muscle memory of only having one launcher. Visually, the planet leads into a sleek sci-fi motif. Once the lighting opened up, I half expected a Tron motorcycle to go flying by. That glowing grid aesthetic hooked me really hard. Layer in the writing that made me laugh during routine setups, and suddenly even belt alignment became a genuinely fun process. The factory feels crisp to build, even conveyors snap neatly, and only sending items when there's a request actually keeps the layout sane. That said, the junction logic feels a little clunky. If a structure changed its request mid-transfer, you get a serious backup. I've had to clear a few choke points by literally just deleting some belts to reset it all. The game gives you options for multiple launchers, which is huge for pacing. Once I added a second one, everything clicked. I moved from waiting and trying to figure out what I was supposed to be doing next, to strategizing and just moving forward full speed. I even sketched out the whole layout in my head as I walked back to base after figuring that out. My father-in-law and I both played the game. We were both fans of Satisfactory, and I had an extra key, so we both jumped in, and our major gripe really aligned. Some of the key mechanics aren't taught, some of the movement feels clunky, and the quality of life in the building process needs a lot of polish. I spent way too much time going into menus just to get out of certain things, where I'd expect a right click to just be able to handle that. Especially during the bigger setups, this is huge. So there's more environmental storytelling here than most factory sims pack into their final builds. There are dried stream beds, empty basins, and ponds that hint at past water flows. There's a design-aware planet work that feels purposeful here. I can't reveal the big moment just yet that really wowed me, but what followed in that section feels like the core of what StarRupture's identity could be. A planet ecosystem that appears to rebuild itself, starting at water sources and spreading out. I do think that the whole thing was scripted, that it wasn't emergent yet. But if they evolved it into a true emergent system over time, that's where the game could become something really far bigger than just a factory loop. If they lean into that regrowth cycle, letting players watch and maybe influence how the world comes back, there's real potential for emotional attachment to your space, not just your setup. So it's definitely early on, only about 15% of the roadmap is live, so you feel the foundations, but you don't see the skyline yet. A few design frictions stand out. Building feels unintuitive. You spend too much of your time unlocking or placing things in menus that would make more sense to do with a click or hotkey. Core systems like the gun cooling, launcher ops, or even the heat meter in the build mode at the top are all discoverable, but not explained. Even longtime genre players might mistake some of these tools. The UI elements, like small text, were frustrating. These aren't red flags, they're just friction points at this point, and I'd expect them to be smoothed out by the time the full build is out. StarRupture may be small right now, but it's already set itself apart. The systems click, the writing lands, and the world reacts to what you do in a way that invites more trust than repetition. With more content, I could see this being more than just a factory game. It'd become a living roadmap of planetary recovery. As it stands, I'd already give this game a 7, which is good and promising, even with only a chunk of the potential visible. At Knght Gaming, a 5 is a true midpoint, so a 6 or a 7 is solid with promise. We reserve a 9 or 10 for rare titles that push boundaries, and this one could get there. But we'll see. They have to do a lot right and listen to our feedback, but they've already started with a firm foundation. Alright, do you like building factories and sci-fi sandboxes with actual consequences? Hit that like button, it keeps the power flowing. Want reviews focused on systems, not hype? Subscribe, because that's our groove. And leave a purple and green heart in the comments if you saw anything that made you feel like the world might actually be alive. Thank you, and as always, it's what we do. Okay, so here comes the spoilerly section. Spoilerly section. So if you want to experience something that blew my mind without any heads up, uh pause it here, I guess. Don't leave, please. Pause it here, I guess, and check out the game, and then come back and watch this time lapse with me. So I got a message saying there was a heat wave coming, and honestly, I didn't know what that meant. So I just kept chugging along, setting up my solar field and launcher zone. Then a countdown started, and countdowns are usually bad. I made it back to my shelter with like 2 seconds to spare, and what happened next was truly incredible. I watched a green, living world turn to ash, not just with a palette swap, but with a full atmospheric shift. My equipment started glowing red hot, the sky dimmed, and everything outside looked like it had been through a disaster movie. It was glorious. When the ashes finally settled, the landscape was completely transformed. Gone was the familiar greenery, and in its place, a barren, scorched wasteland. No color, no life. But then, around a nearby pond, I started to notice a little patch of green, and some grass was poking through the dirt. The ecosystem was growing back. Not instantly, but subtly. Almost like it was waiting for me to turn around before doing something new. It was so smooth, I genuinely wondered if the game was cheating and growing things just outside of my view. Every time I looked again, something had changed. That's when I hit record and started planning a time lapse, just to see if it really grew back in front of you, which it does. This whole sequence isn't just cool, it was where I see the real potential in this game. I started imagining what this could look like by the end of development, with bigger plants, wildlife returning in stages, a world that just doesn't heal, but it feels different each time. And what if I protected a patch of land? Would it become a sanctuary that helped the world regrow? Could I reintroduce species earlier? Could I design a base with shielding that preserves part of a biome? And most crucially, can I finally prune those spider things out of existence? I don't mind combat, but spiders are the worst. So that whole heat wave regrowth cycle made me stop building and just think about how much more this game could become, about what could be possible, and about how excited I am to see the other 85% of the developer's roadmap. So if you're watching this, thank you for coming along and watching with me, and I can't wait to rebuild this world from ashes with all of my knights. Thank you again.